Welcome to the Magical Musings podcast. I am Baal Kadmon. Before I go on, if you are watching the video version of this podcast, I want to apologize for the very trite image of the genie in the bottle. It is usually associated with jinn, and that's why I put it there, and I thought it was actually quite funny, but it actually resonates quite deeply because they are in many ways a wish-fulfilling entity. In my book, Jinn Magick, I discuss more in detail about what the Jinn are and how to use them. But in this podcast, I'm just going to give you an overview of what the Jinn are. They were first mentioned in any great depth in the Quran and then later in the 1001 Arabian Nights. Many people say that the Jinn are all the spiritual entities that other people worship. So, for example, these two fellows, all those statues in the back and those faces are jinn. Of course, I don't believe that. I think jinn are a separate entity, but that's besides the point. So let me give you a little bit of a background on what and who the jinn are. The word jinn comes from the root Arabic word janna, which means hidden or concealed. The jinn have been very interesting to me because they're different from the other spiritual entities that we usually call upon. They exist in an unseen world that sort of parallels our own. They live, they die, they have a variety of different free will types that we have. They even have a certain amount of religious diversity that rivals our own. And that's what really amazes me about them. So in many ways, they have a very special relationship with us. They're not quite angelic, they're not demonic, and neither are we. We're sort of this intermediate being which the humans and jinns sort of occupy. But at the same time, according to the Quran, the jinn came first. If you go to the Quran, chapter 15, verses 26 through 27, it states that the jinn came before humanity and that they were created from like a smokeless flame of fire, whereas humanity was created from dust and mud and earth. And since they're created from fire, they tend to have, I guess you could say, a fire disposition, because when I use them, which I reveal in my book, they were tricksters. They were very in your face, and I've already received a few emails stating that other people have experienced this as well. So like I said, they're in essence an intermediary being that is slightly beyond our plane of existence, but yet in many ways can interact with our existence as well. And according to Islamic legend, the jinn were on earth about 2,000 years before the first quote-unquote man, I guess you could say Adam, came on the scene. And during this 2,000-year time, there was a lot of infighting between the jinns, and of course they destroyed the environment, and they were destroying themselves, and then I started to think, well, that sort of sounds like humanity, and we're sort of doing the same thing. But, I digress. I'm not going to get into that right now, maybe in a future podcast. In Islam, very much like Christianity, the belief in devils and demons is a very fundamental part of the religion. One cannot be a Christian and say, well, at least a Christian in the conventional sense, or even, let's say, a Catholic, okay, without believing in some sort of a devil figure. In fact, the whole, how shall I say, the whole Christian struggle is to overcome such a being, because this being leads mankind into temptation and etc. Of course, if you're secular, that might sound, rather silly. But if you peer deeper into the Christian theology, the devil is a very active player, and it is practically sacrilegious not to at least acknowledge his presence. In Islam, the very same thing applies to the jinn. You can't be a quote-unquote conventional Muslim without actually acknowledging their existence, because the mentioning of jinn permeates the entire Quranic tradition as well as the prophetic traditions that are written in books such as the Hadith. And to take it a step further, the Quran itself was actually meant for both humans and jinn. And that's really the very, very interesting part of this. So mankind and jinn are two species of creation that have innate intelligence. It's amazing. Since jinn are not devils and they're not really demons, the only corollaries we can come up with in Western traditions are maybe fairies or goblins or extraterrestrials. A lot of people do think that jinn are those things. I personally do not. Whether fairies and extraterrestrials are in fact jinn, it's not really up to me to say, but I personally do not think they are. Personally, when I interact with earth spirits, I do not have a predefined notion of what they are. They are, earth spirits. As far as aliens are concerned, I have to believe, just on a statistical basis, that we aren't alone in this universe. But in the end, it's really not up to me to decide. It's up to you if you believe in those entities. I know that I believe in them personally, and I don't think that they are jinn, but again, there's a lot in this universe that I don't know, and none of us really do. The jinn, very much like humans, have genders, and there's male and female, and they can shapeshift into anything they want, unlike us, of course. The male counterpart is called jinni, and the female counterpart is jinnaya. So far, in my own experience, I think I've only encountered the jinni, but I really don't know. They didn't actually appear to me in a physical form. They just appeared in knocking things over or helping me win $250 in a scratch off and just a few little other things. And so a gender never really came to me, but apparently there are jinn that appear as male or as female. And in the end, it doesn't really matter anyway. As I mentioned, jinn and humans live very much side by side. And supposedly they actually outnumber us. And I think it was, I know it was Muhammad who said in the one of the hadith, he says, God divided the jinn and the humans into 10 parts. And one part makes up the human race, and the other 9 parts make up the jinn. What this tells me is that they are everywhere. And after my experience, I actually believe them. And like humanity, jinns marry. They marry each other, and in some instances, they can marry humans. They come in a human form if they fall in love with a human. And unfortunately, there's not a clearly defined way to know if your spouse is actually a jinn. So I'm really, really sorry about that. You might be right now laying in bed with a jinn. Maybe I'm a jinn. I don't know. Maybe you're a jinn. You don't know. Well, maybe some people do. The jinn also have, like I stated earlier, a sense of free will. And so they can make decisions by their own free will. And that's where I discuss that a little bit more in detail in my book on how we can call upon them without, really, really impinging on their free will. And that's something you'll have to see in the book. They also are mortal. So they too have diseases and they die. And it's very hard to imagine what that would look like for a jinn, since they don't have a physical body. But I guess you could say they have some type of spiritual genetics or something like that. It's very hard to tell. The jinn usually reside in a parallel universe, but I think that in order to personify them, many of the Muslim scholars and the pre-Islamic scholars needed to place them somewhere. And so we have many stories that they reside in bathrooms and cemeteries and ruins. But to me, that doesn't seem likely because they have very elaborate communities, and I just don't see them, taking up shop with this elaborate community in bathrooms and in cemeteries. What I think really what the Islamic scholars and the pre-Islamic scholars were saying was that they might haunt those places. And then, of course, to them, they're not haunting it, but to us, when we come to these places, they might appear, they might cause, a bump in the night, and then we consider it to be a haunting. but it might just be that they're simply passing through. The Jinn also have abilities that we don't have. They have magical abilities, and that's what I focus on in my book. There's a great, rich tradition both in the pseudo-epigraphical biblical texts and the Quran that state that the King Solomon controlled the Jinn, and that's how he built the second temple of Jerusalem. And they work very quickly, as the Quran says, in a twinkle of an eye. And, is there proof that that actually happened, that they were actually an army that built the second temple of Jerusalem? It's hard to tell. There's actually very little proof of who even inhabited the second temple, but it is understood that it was Solomon. And in many ways, maybe because there's not a lot of proof, maybe that shows that maybe the Jinn did do it, and there's no recollection of any workers or anything. So that could be a very interesting line to study. But I think personally that the Jinn are very much like humans, and they can help us, but they are tricksters. They know that they're more powerful than we are, and so that's why they can play these little games with us. And if you want to hear more about my experiences, you can get my book, but I just give you a quick little overview. And I'm not the only person who has experienced this, where things would fall over. I recollected in my book that the top shelf of one of my bookcases literally fell over, and the things that I actually had witnesses for this. This wasn't just something I'm creating. People saw literally the bookcase, not the bookcase, but the bookshelf tip, and all the books fall over. And on the top shelves, I usually keep my light books, so it couldn't have been the weight. I've had someone email me stating that things have gone missing, or other stacks of, let's say, CDs or something would fall over. And that is typical. That's very typical of the Jinn, and that they like to play around because they know we sort of get freaked out by that. But if you're sort of stern with them, they will listen to you, and they will do what you want them to do. The thing is that, you have to give them some time, because they too have their own free will. They have their own life. So I recollected, I wanted to, in my book, I wanted, some type of financial proof. And the same day that not the same day, but the next day, I, did a lot of scratch off, and at first I lost and then I won. But I had like this premonition to go in, and I'm not one who really, plays those games, so it was sort of a little odd for me to do it, and it just, I don't account it to beginner's luck, because other things happened after that as well. So that's pretty much what the Jinn are, just so you can expect from them. They are a little bit of a trickster, but they will work with you, and there are classes of Jinn, as I say in my book, that are more willing to work with humans than others, and I only call upon those that will. There are classes of Jinn that you do not want to deal with, because they don't like humans very much, and you don't want to get in trouble. So if you want more information about the Jinn, you can, look at my book, Jinn Magick. It's available on Kindle, paperback, and audiobook. You can just type in on Amazon Baal Kadmon. That's Baalkadmon, and just put the keyword Jinn, and you'll find the book, and it's available in all those three formats. I think you'll enjoy it. I know so far I've gotten very, very positive feedback. Some people were freaked out, I have to admit, but that's good, because that means that something's going on. So if you like to learn more, just go there and take a look, and let me know what you think. If you go to my website, baalkadmon.com, and send me an email, I'm very quick to respond, within a day or two, sometimes 3, depends what I'm doing. But I'll always respond, and all my readers who do email me know this. So please do so, and hopefully you will enjoy, and I would definitely want to know your experiences using the Jinn. So mote it be.